let's dive into the game. Our first challenge of the day, it is, our second challenge of the day, it is by a man who wishes us good luck. We'll wish him good luck back. Abanglegendbhai. I would guess that this is an Indian name. We're going to go for e4, e5 here. Abang says, let me just mute the stream real quick. So that is nice of him, since we can go ahead and explain things. We don't have a delay currently on our stream. So we're going for the honor system. Bishop c4, we're going to play bishop c5. This is Italian game. It doesn't get more popular than this. Back in the day, when I was learning chess, the sort of Rolls Royce of e4, e5 openings was the Ruy Lopez, the Spanish opening. But in recent years, bishop c4 is what fashion likes, and now knight c3, going for some kind of after the move knight f6, going for a 4 knights Italian variation. The Fuchsia says, doesn't get more boring. Certainly, it's an interesting one. I can see that it's considered quite boring at many levels. I myself at times don't find it quite as exciting or as interesting as okay, let's go ahead and castle. Quite as exciting or interesting as other variations like within the Spanish, because of the symmetrical nature. You can see all of these pawns are symmetrically placed, the knights as well, and of course the bishops. So with so much symmetry on the board, sometimes it can get a little bit dry, the positions. But on the other hand, the game is very, there's so many possibilities, and all of the pieces are kept on the board. So I would say it's a lot less boring than some lines that have been analyzed right up to a draw. Here, I kind of want to take this piece. It's a really strong piece, but I don't want to take it with my knight, because after pawn takes d5, we would have a really nasty double attack. So I'm going to take with the bishop instead. And then now we'll take. Now, both sides have the same amount of minor pieces, but I feel that this structure is not going to be so strong. When white plays e takes d5, that means that now I have 4 pawns on the king side versus only 3 for white. So after knight e7, c4, I can start to think about f5 ideas, trying to use my majority. The problem with this is that white can actually hit back with d4, and after pawn takes d4, knight takes d4, we would have situations where that knight can jump onto e6. So I really don't want this. So now I'm thinking, how can I stop him from playing this move d3 to d4? So I see 2 ways to do this. The first is knight f5, controlling the d4 square, and the second is to play c6. And the point is that after pawn takes, I'll recapture with the knight, and that controls the d4 square. It's hard to say which one of these moves is best. I think that they're approximately equal, but I'm thinking right now which one will give me maybe more chances to complicate the game. And I think knight f5 is the move, because it keeps more material on the board. Usually, if you're trying to play for a win and your opponent plays quite a symmetrical position, one of the best things to do is to try and keep material on the board whenever you can. And another thing that's good to do is try to create imbalances whenever possible. So in other words, if he gave me the option, let's say, to exchange this knight for the bishop, that would create an imbalance where I would be left with bishop versus knight, and that would, on average, give me more winning chances than if I'm left with knight versus knight or bishop versus bishop. Donex for me, it's good to see you here. So I won't explain what is Chessfactor, as I think I already did that not such a long while ago. And Kunuth Thamsoon is asking, what is Chessfactor? So he may be new to the scene. Okay, so g4, hold on a second. What to do here? Chessfactor, I think because I've explained it, I will explain it from time to time, but because I just explained it, I don't want to bore the viewers by repeating myself, but check out the website chessfactor.com and you will quickly see, or their YouTube channel, Chessfactor. Chessfactor. It's called Chessfactor on YouTube. So one of those two is good. So now what to do here? I have some crazy ideas, but I'm not sure that I should do this. Basically, I realized the move knight g3 is possible. But after rook here, how do I get out? My knight has no escape square. So then I'm thinking f5, but then he can go king g2, and then my knight on g3 seems to be lost. I can take and take, but in the end, I don't see what to do. So knight h4 is another possibility. Knight d4 is another possibility. I like knight h4. Yeah, let's do knight h4. One thing, by the way, to see is if bishop g5, that would create a double attack. But after knight takes f3, so in this position here, if he goes bishop g5, then I could actually just take here with check. And then when he takes back, then I would take this guy. So that's not a possibility. He goes bishop e3. And now my idea is to play f5. Maybe I could take first. Because the thing is, I'm not sure if I care about bishop takes c5, if this is an issue. I feel like after d takes c5, the pawn on e5 could fall, so I'm not going to allow that. I could drop the bishop back, but that feels a bit slow, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take. So now I'm going f5. I have to say my opponent's strategy has been really, really good. It hasn't been, I don't think my opponent has been playing, let's say, very ambitiously or very aggressively, but he's managed to get a position with reduced material on the board. And sometimes, you know, like, of course, the romantics will say, no, you know, we have to always play for a win, always, you know, go for the throat. And of course, that's usually the most exciting brand of chess. But sometimes, you know, you're happy to just get a simple position. If you feel like your opponent is maybe the stronger player, then I don't personally feel that there's any shame in playing for equality, even with the white pieces. It's up to your opponent if he can find ways to press you, you know. And I mean, you see somebody like Magnus Carlsen, very often some excellent players, 2600 players, 2700 players play for a draw against him as white, and he manages to mix it up, you know. So I never have so much sympathy, even though I think we've all been there, I never have so much sympathy for people who sort of complain that their opponent played for a draw. I think that's just the nature of the game. I think it's really interesting, though. Vladimir Kramnik has spoken about the possibility of a new variant of chess, very simple, no castling chess. And he says that this actually is really a great way to make the game more complex and less likely to lead to draws. Anyway, going back to the game, my opponent here, under some pressure, we see black has a nice queen here, controlling the e1 square. In my opinion, here in this position, white needed to maybe go rook f3, then put the queen on d2, and then maybe this rook like this, set himself up like this. But he was a bit careless. He went queen f3. It's a very natural square, but the problem is after rook here, now black threatens to move rook e3, and you cannot challenge for the e-file because of this pressure. So I think white missed this. He goes rook f2, and now black can play the move rook e3. And the problem is that the queen is really stuck for squares. If white had his rook on f1, then this move wouldn't be possible for a very nice point, which is that white would have queen takes e3, and if f takes e3, then rook takes f8 would be checkmate. But in this position after rook e3, I think it's more or less game over, because if you move your queen, the only square is d1, but then h3 is falling with check, and that's not just the pawn, but it's much worse than that, because the white king is too weak. So yeah, This is the danger when you play. In general, one piece of advice that I would have for people. I mean, so as I think a lot of the viewers here, I think already maybe know me. So you guys will know that I coach, and one of the most common things, or one of the big questions that I get asked all the time, or common issues, is, man, sometimes my opponents, they play for a draw, and I don't want to play this line because it's too boring, it's too drawish, it's too equalish. But I've never felt that this should be a major concern, because at the club level, there's always opportunities. I mean, you even see Magnus Carlsen, he's grinding down opponents in, rook and pawn endgames with equal pawns. These are guys who are 2700, and he's grinding them down from boring looking positions. So, I'm not too sympathetic about people who say that they can't grind down, 1600 opponents because the position was very drawish out of the opening, or because they played for a drawish line. I think that if you're unable to grind down your opponents, the key is to improve the middle game and end game technique, rather than to worry about changing up your repertoire. But anyway, that is just my opinion, and you know what they say about opinions. I guess they say a lot of things. Some more politically correct than others. So Z Nation Chess says, the point about the kingside majority and d3 to d4 was super instructive. I appreciate that, Z Nation. I'm glad to hear that you're enjoying this. Now, of course, I want to push this pawn, but after e2, the problem is rook e3 check would pick up the pawn. So I'll go queen e1. And now, so my opponent said, missed this, only saw it after I moved my rook. Now, actually, I will just respond to this. I'm assuming that my opponent will tune in. So thank you for the game, Abang. Now, one of the things that you have to be careful with, if you are, let's say, on the white player's side, is, I mean, apart from being a coach, I'm also, of course, a player, and I've played many times against all sorts of chess players. And in Ireland in particular, I played plenty of open tournaments where, you could be playing anybody ranging from 1,000 in rating right up to, 2,500 or 2,600 in rating. And one of the things that I've noticed when I've played against lower rated players is that oftentimes in their enthusiasm to get as many pieces off the board, they make strategic concessions. And that's something I really want to advise you guys not to do in your game, or at least not to get into the habit. It's much easier said than done. I've done it myself when I've been the lower rated player, but it usually it's not a good strategy. So for example, here, white seeks out some exchanges, but maybe it's not ideal, because after this exchange, he's sort of here, only white can stand to be better. Maybe a move like bishop to g5 here would make a lot of sense, pinning and asking black how exactly he's going to deal with this pin. However, in the enthusiasm to get more pieces off the board and try and move closer towards the draw, moves like knight d5 here suddenly solve black's problems and mean that black now is definitely not worse. And after this, we can see here knight f5, g4 invites if black either goes back or maybe goes forward. But if he goes forward, then more pieces will come off the board. And that's what I do. But the risk with a move like g4 is that you are going to make your king a little bit less safe. So there's some issues here and some issues with the king. And then here, there is an exchange of pieces. And maybe something like knight takes, queen takes, and then a move like queen f3 would keep things a little bit more solid. I'm not sure if that's the best line, but it could well be a better approach. But still, this is okay. Bishop takes, now f5. And now again, maybe there is something better. I don't know, I'm not going to check the game with an engine, but perhaps there's something a little bit more resilient, like queen e1 or something like this, rather than to take, because you get more pieces off the board, that's true, but the queen now is invited in. So you see the way it's gone from only white can be better to it's probably about drawish to only black can be better to suddenly there's a bit of pressure mounting. And it sometimes you feel like, you know, the game was just about to be a draw and it was just one detail that was missed. For example, my opponent said, he said that here he saw the move rook e8 only after playing queen f3, and so it was too late. And so if you turn on the engine, here you can see that the engine says, yes, if white finds the move queen e1, there's still equality. But the problem is, the point is that white didn't need to put himself in a situation where he's got to find only moves. He went from a position where he could only be better to a position where he has the draw, but only down a super narrow path. And this happens a lot in chess. And so it's something to be careful of in your own games. But I don't, at the same time, I say this with I don't mean any disrespect to my opponents. So thank you very much for the game. And I hope that you can tune in to the commentary afterwards. Hope you find it instructive. And of course, actually, to speak about, to make any criticisms, I should criticize also my own play. Here, I have a little bit of an edge. And after these moves that were played well, here I think my choice of move f4 was very poor. Because here I was -2, but the best way to punish that, to push through that advantage, was queen g5, pressing this point, and after defense, then this is the idea behind queen g5. You not only press e3, but you pin that pawn on g4, and this would have been a winning advantage. But I was not able to find the right path, and I let my opponent back into the game after f4. So yeah, I think that's that as far as that particular game.